Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it. The chandelier in the foyer cast a soft glow on the polished marble floor, reflecting the opulence of the house that I, Daniel Rogers, called home. Wealth and influence had been kind to me, allowing me to surround myself with the finest luxuries. Yet, despite all this, there was an emptiness that echoed through the grand halls, a void left by the departure of Amanda, my loyal maid of 20 years. She had become more than just an employee. She was a confidant, a fixture in my life. Her resignation to be with her family was a loss that weighed heavily on me. In her place came Eileen, young, with an air of quiet determination. She stood before me in the same foyer where Amanda had bid her final farewell. There was something about Eileen that intrigued me, a glint of resolve in her eyes, a sense of purpose that belied her role as a maid. "Welcome, Eileen," I said, extending my hand. "I trust you'll find everything to your satisfaction here." "Thank you, Mr. Rogers," she replied, her voice steady. "I'll do my best." She was polite, almost too polite, I noted as I watched her. Her posture was impeccable, and there was an intensity to her gaze that seemed unusual for someone in her position. As I walked her through the house, explaining her duties and the layout, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than met the eye. Days passed and Eileen settled into her duties with a competence that quickly earned my approval. She was thorough, efficient, and seemed to have an uncanny knack for anticipating my needs. Yet, a part of me remained cautious, guarded. Trust was not easily given, and recent events had made me even more wary. One evening, as I prepared for a business trip, an idea struck me. I needed to test Eileen's honesty. In my study, hidden behind a portrait, was a safe containing valuables and old memories, things I held dear. I left the safe slightly ajar and placed a small surveillance camera discreetly in the room. If Eileen was truly trustworthy, there would be nothing to worry about, but as she wasn't. With my preparations complete, I called Eileen to the study. "Eileen, I'll be away on a business trip for a few days," I informed her. "Please make sure everything is in order while I'm gone." "Of course, Mr. Rogers. Is there anything specific you need me to take care of?" she asked, her expression attentive. "Just the usual? And remember, the study is off limits," I added, my eyes lingering on her for a moment longer than necessary. She nodded, her face unreadable. "Understood, sir. Safe travels." With that, I left for my trip, the thought of the open safe gnawing at the back of my mind. The days of my business trip were a whirlwind of meetings and negotiations, but my thoughts constantly drifted back to the surveillance camera in my study. What would it reveal about Eileen? Would she succumb to temptation, or would she prove herself to be as trustworthy as she appeared? Upon my return, the house was as I had left it, immaculate and orderly. Eileen greeted me with a polite smile, and I couldn't help but wonder if she had any inkling of the test she had been subjected to. "Welcome back, Mr. Rogers. I hope your trip was successful," she said, her tone respectful. "It was, thank you. How are things here?" I asked, searching her face for any signs of guilt or unease. "Everything was fine. No issues to report," she replied calmly. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, I made my way to the study. My heart pounded as I retrieved the surveillance footage. Sitting at my desk, I watched intently, fast-forwarding through hours of uneventful recordings. Just as I was beginning to feel a sense of relief, something caught my eye. Eileen entered the study, her expression unreadable. She approached the safe and paused, glancing around as if to ensure she was alone. My breath caught in my throat as she opened the safe further and retrieved an old photo album. She flipped through the pages, her fingers lingering on a particular photograph. Then, to my astonishment, she slipped the photo into her pocket and closed the safe. I stopped the footage, my mind racing. Why had she taken that photograph? What significance did it hold for her? The answers, I knew, would change everything. The next morning, I couldn't shake the image of Eileen pocketing the photograph. It gnawed at me, the sense of betrayal mingling with curiosity. What had driven her to take that particular photo from my old album? I had to confront her, but not without a plan. I decided to start my day as usual. Over breakfast, I observed Eileen as she went about her duties, appearing as diligent and composed as ever. Her demeanor was inscrutable, giving away nothing of the secrets she had tucked away. I needed to draw her out, to understand her motives. "Eileen, could you come to the study after breakfast?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "Of course, Mr. Rogers," she replied, meeting my gaze with that same steady resolve. After breakfast, I went to the study and waited. The room felt different now, charged with the knowledge of what had transpired in my absence. I glanced at the portrait concealing the safe, my mind racing with possibilities. Moments later, Eileen entered, her expression neutral. "You wanted to see me, sir?" she asked, her hands clasped in front of her. "Yes, Eileen. Please have a seat," I said, gesturing to the chair opposite my desk. She sat down, her posture impeccable. "I need to discuss something with you." She nodded, her eyes never leaving mine. "I'm listening." "I've always valued honesty and integrity in my household staff," I began, choosing my words carefully. When Amanda left, I knew it would be difficult to find someone who could replace her. "You've been doing an excellent job, Eileen, but there's something I need to address." Her expression remained calm, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Was it apprehension? "During my business trip, I conducted a small test," I continued. "I left the safe in this room slightly open and set up a surveillance camera to monitor it. When I reviewed the footage, I saw you take a photograph from my old album. Would you care to explain why?" For a moment, there was silence. Eileen's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. "I see," she said, her voice steady. "I apologize if my actions seem suspicious, Mr. Rogers. The photograph I took holds personal significance to me." "And what significance might that be?" I asked, leaning forward. Eileen took a deep breath, her hands gripping the edge of her seat. "The woman in that photograph is my mother, Jennifer. I recognized her immediately. She used to tell me stories about you, about how you were once close but had a falling out. I took the photograph because I wanted to confront you, to understand why you abandoned her and took everything from her." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Jennifer. The name brought back a flood of memories, happy and painful ones. I had loved her once deeply, but our relationship had ended in a maelstrom of misunderstandings and regrets. "I didn't abandon her, Eileen," I said, my voice rough with emotion. "There were circumstances. You took everything from her." Eileen's voice rose, her eyes blazing with anger. "She struggled for years while you built this empire. She never got over you." Her accusation hung in the air, thick with tension. I had to know more, to understand her perspective. "I need to know what happened," I said quietly. "Will you let me hear her side of the story?" Eileen's anger seemed to ebb, replaced by a wary hope. "Yes, but you need to hear it from her. She deserves that much." I nodded, the weight of her words settling heavily on my shoulders. "We'll visit her together. I need to make things right." As Eileen stood to leave, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of dread and anticipation. This confrontation was long overdue, and the truths it would reveal had the power to change everything. "Thank you, Eileen," I said softly. She paused at the door, looking back at me with a hint of vulnerability. "Thank you for listening, Mr. Rogers." With that, she left, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the looming shadow of the past I had tried so hard to forget. The drive to Jennifer's house was tense, the air thick with unspoken words. Eileen sat beside me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I could feel her anxiety, mirroring my own. This was a confrontation that had been brewing for years, and the weight of it pressed heavily on both of us. As we pulled up to a modest, weathered house on the outskirts of town, I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. This was a far cry from the life I had built for myself. Eileen led the way up the path, her steps resolute. I followed, my heart pounding in my chest. She knocked on the door and we waited in silence. Moments later, the door creaked open, revealing Jennifer. Her hair was streaked with silver and lines of hardship were etched into her face, but her eyes still held that familiar spark. "Eileen," she said, her voice a mixture of surprise and confusion. Then her gaze shifted to me, and her expression hardened. "Daniel." "Hello, Jennifer," I said, my voice faltering slightly. "May we come in?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in," she said tersely. We entered a small, cozy living room. The walls were adorned with family photos, many of which featured Eileen at various stages of her life. A sense of nostalgia washed over me, mixed with a sharp regret for the years that had passed. "Why are you here?" Jennifer asked, crossing her arms defensively. "I found out that Eileen is your daughter," I began, my voice steady. "And she told me about the struggles you faced. I wanted to understand, to hear your side of the story." Jennifer's eyes flashed with anger. "My side of the story? You mean the part where you left me with nothing, Daniel? You promised me the world, and then you just vanished." "I didn't vanish," I protested. "There were misunderstandings, things I never got a chance to explain." Jennifer shook her head, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Explain? You didn't even try, Daniel. You just walked away." Eileen stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Mom, please, let him speak." Jennifer's gaze softened as she looked at her daughter, then she nodded. "Fine, speak, Daniel." I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "Jennifer, I loved you, more than anything, but my family was against our relationship from the start. They manipulated things behind the scenes, and by the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. They made it seem like I abandoned you, but I was fighting for us, for our future." Jennifer's expression wavered, doubt creeping in. You were?" "Yes," I said, my voice earnest. "I tried to reach out, but my letters never got to you. They intercepted everything. I thought you had moved on, that you didn't want anything to do with me." Jennifer sank into a chair, her face a mask of pain and confusion. "I never knew, Daniel. I thought you had forgotten about me, about us." Eileen knelt beside her mother, holding her hand. "Mom, he didn't forget. He never stopped caring." Tears spilled down Jennifer's cheeks, and she looked at me with a mixture of sorrow and hope. "I didn't know, Daniel. I didn't know." I moved closer, my heart aching. "I'm so sorry, Jennifer. For everything. I never meant to hurt you." Jennifer took a shaky breath, her eyes meeting mine. "And I'm sorry too, for all the years we lost." Eileen stood, her gaze shifting between us. "We can still make things right. We have a chance to heal, to be a family." Jennifer nodded, a small, hopeful smile forming on her lips. "Yes, we do." In that moment, the years of pain and misunderstanding began to melt away. We were finally facing the truth, and it was a beginning, perhaps not new, but a beginning nonetheless. The morning sun cast a gentle glow through the sheer curtains of Jennifer's living room, illuminating the dust particles that danced in the air. We sat around the old wooden coffee table, a silent agreement that the past needed to be revisited, no matter how painful. Eileen had made coffee, the rich aroma mingling with the heavy scent of old memories. Jennifer pulled out a weathered shoebox from a nearby shelf, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it. Inside were letters, photographs, and mementos from a time long gone. She handed me a faded photograph of us at the lake, both of us laughing, carefree and full of dreams. "This was our spot," Jennifer said softly, her eyes misty with nostalgia. "We planned our future here." I took the photograph, my heart clenching. I remember, we had so many plans. Jennifer looked at me, regret etched into her features. "I thought you forgot me, Daniel. My mother convinced me you had moved on. She burned the letters I wrote to you." The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. She burned them? I never received a single one. Eileen, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. "It's like you both were fighting ghosts. Misunderstandings and lies kept you apart." Jennifer nodded, her voice tinged with bitterness. "My mother thought she was protecting me, but she only made things worse." I reached across the table, taking Jennifer's hand. "We can't change the past, but we can learn from it. We can make things right." Jennifer squeezed my hand, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "I want to believe that, Daniel. I do." Eileen stood up, her expression determined. "There's one more place we need to visit, the lake. It was always a special place for both of you." Jennifer and I exchanged a glance, both of us knowing the truth in her words. The lake held memories of our happiest moments, and perhaps it could help us heal. We drove in silence, the landscape shifting from urban to rural, until we arrived at the familiar path leading to the lake. The water shimmered under the sunlight, just as it had all those years ago. We walked to the old dock, the wood creaking under our weight. This place hasn't changed, Jennifer said, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, taking in the serene beauty of the lake. It's like time stood still here. Jennifer sat down on the edge of the dock, her feet dangling over the water. I joined her, the cool breeze carrying the scent of pine and fresh water. We sat in silence, letting the memories wash over us. Do you remember our promise? Jennifer asked suddenly, her eyes meeting mine. Of course, I replied, a smile tugging at my lips. We promised to always come back here, no matter what happened. Jennifer leaned against me, her head resting on my shoulder. Maybe it's time to make a new promise, to be honest with each other, to communicate, and to never let anything come between us again. I wrapped my arm around her, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I promise, Jennifer, we'll face the future together. Eileen watched us, a soft smile on her face. I think this is the beginning of something beautiful. As the sun set over the lake, casting a golden hue over the water, I felt a renewed sense of hope. We couldn't change the past, but we could shape our future. And for the first time in years, the future looked bright. The next morning, we gathered in Jennifer's living room once more, the weight of unresolved truths pressing heavily on us. Jennifer had barely slept, dark circles under her eyes betraying her restlessness. Eileen was pacing the floor, her anxiety palpable. I sat in a corner, trying to piece together the fractured history that had brought us to this moment. Jennifer took a deep breath and began. There's something you both need to know. Something I should have told you a long time ago. She glanced at Eileen, then at me, her gaze steady despite the emotion in her eyes. Daniel, you didn't just abandon me. You abandoned Eileen, your daughter. The room fell silent. The words hung in the air, their impact profound. My mind raced, trying to process the revelation. Eileen, my daughter. It seemed impossible, yet everything suddenly made sense. The familiarity in her eyes, the unspoken connection we felt. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice strained with a mixture of anger and sadness. Jennifer looked down, her fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. I wanted to, but after everything that happened, I didn't know how. I was scared, and my mother convinced me it was best to raise her alone. I thought you'd moved on, that you'd forgotten about us. Eileen stopped pacing and turned to face us, her eyes filled with hurt and confusion. You both kept this from me, all these years. Jennifer reached out to her, but Eileen took a step back. I did what I thought was best at the time, Jennifer said, her voice cracking. I realize now that I was wrong. I should have told you the truth, both of you. I stood up, feeling a surge of protectiveness and regret. Eileen, I'm so sorry. If I'd known. Eileen cut me off, her voice trembling. It's not just about knowing, Daniel. It's about the years we lost, the life we could have had as a family. Jennifer's eyes welled with tears. I know I can't change the past, but I want to make it right. I want us to be a family, if you'll both let me. The room was silent again, the enormity of Jennifer's confession settling over us. I walked over to Eileen, placing a hand on her shoulder. I don't know how to make up for the lost time, but I want to try. I want to be the father you deserve. Eileen's eyes softened, the anger giving way to vulnerability. I want that too, but it's going to take time. We have a lot to work through. Jennifer nodded, her tears flowing freely now. I understand. I just hope we can start over, build something new from here. I pulled both Jennifer and Eileen into a tentative embrace, the first step towards healing the wounds of the past. We'll figure it out together, one step at a time. As we held each other, I felt a sense of resolve. The truth had been revealed, and while it was painful, it was also a chance for a new beginning. We had the opportunity to rebuild our lives, to create the family we should have always been. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, we were facing it together.